Welcome back. The New Hampshire House of Representatives is always one of the more interesting hangouts in Granite State politics, but this year, with such a narrow majority held by the Republicans, there's even more intrigue as de facto power in the House can and does become a jump ball for whoever has the numbers. Representative Matt Wilhelm of Manchester leads House Democrats in Concord, and he is our guest this morning on Close Up. Matt, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam.
So right now in your line of work, attendance is everything. Republicans had the numbers this last week to pass an expansion of eligibility for education freedom accounts, a 3-vote margin. So if you had enough people there, you might have been able to defeat this. I know you probably try to be understanding about attendance in a citizen legislature where everyone's a volunteer, but man, this was an issue that a lot of Democrats campaigned on, and if you had the numbers there, this wouldn't have happened.
That's right. And, you know, I think every given week we're going to have attendance swing back and forth. There may be an afternoon attendance majority like we had a couple weeks ago. But what's important is that, one, we're taking care of ourselves, making sure that we are protecting ourselves from the flu, from COVID. This is a really tricky time of year. And also just building a spirit of support for one another. We've got a very diverse caucus that are taking care of children at home, that are balancing their work schedules, that are caring for family members. We saw Republicans struggle with attendance a couple weeks back. We struggled with attendance this week, and each time we'll have a wake-up call, I think, for one party or the other. But we'll be working hard to make sure that we've got our members there as often and consistently as we can to fight for Granite State values.
So when you won your leadership position, you extended an olive branch to House Majority Leader Jason Osborne and Speaker Packard. At this point, how would you assess that relationship right now of trying to cooperate with this narrow majority?
We've, I think, had a pretty productive working relationship. We don't see eye to eye on policy all the time, but I would say that there is, there are regular check-ins with the Speaker. We see each other at least once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times. We issued a joint statement this past week denouncing some hate speech that has been directed towards some of our House colleagues on the basis of racism, sexism, LGBTQ, anti-trans issues. I think it's important, and I think that there are opportunities where the two parties can come together. When I first stepped into this leadership role, I really urged the Speaker to establish a committee on housing and childcare, which is something that we heard a lot about on the campaign trail. Both parties did. And it's something that impacts our business community. It's something that impacts, families. And, was really happy to see the Speaker establish those committees so that we can hopefully build some bipartisan consensus around solutions that are going to move the ball forward for Granite State.
Yeah, the polling shows that housing is a top issue for people in New Hampshire right now. Of course, this debate always enters a different kind of realm at the State House because the local aspect comes in, and a lot of times you see those partisan lines scrambled and allegiances kind of go different ways based on how people feel about their own town and development there. You saw a bill for infill housing defeated. A lot of Democrats voted against it a few weeks back. How do you make any progress on this issue when the local control argument is so strong?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that's something that the Special Committee on Housing is really doing a deep dive on. I think they're collecting a lot of information right now, making sure that the 10 members, 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, are able to get up to speed on what's worked in the past, what the challenges are, what the perspectives of different stakeholders are. And I'm looking forward to next year when there will hopefully be a bipartisan bill or 2 that can come that we can really rally both parties around so that we can move the ball forward.
We're back to another debate on a parental bill of rights at the State House. Obviously, the Senate introduced its version this last week, and the House kind of copied that essentially. Looking at the bill itself, this is different than the last time around. The last bill last year was like a mandated reporting. Teachers in schools would have to come forward with this information no matter what. In this bill, there's an attempt to make it that if the parent asks, that the school or the administrator has to answer truthfully and completely about any issue, but the focus here is on gender identity or expression or something like that might be happening at the school. What's your perspective on this? If a parent does come and they are not a risk to the child and they ask what's going on, shouldn't the school have to answer truthfully and completely?
Look, I think that we've got a really strong system within our SAUs where, we've got superintendents, we've got principals, we've got teachers who are looking to create an environment where students can be accepted for who they are and supported through their journey. I think that it's going to, what we've got to do is make sure that we are encouraging lines of communication to be open. I really worry sometimes about whether or not we're really thinking about the kids and thinking about how we can support them through those journeys. And I'm looking forward to continuing to watch this debate. There was a last-minute amendment that was introduced on Tuesday. A lot of spirited, robust discussion from folks on both sides. When I hear really angry voices at the State House, I'm a little taken aback, and I think that it's going to be important that we dig into those specific policies to make sure that they're serving our students and their families.
But to the question itself, if a parent who is not a danger to a child comes to a school and wants information about what's going on, shouldn't they get it?
I think they are getting it in most cases. So I think what's important is that we make sure that we are supporting our kids, that we are really thinking through how those policies are serving our students and how we're supporting them through some really challenging situations. I know that our LGBTQ plus community has some strong concerns about the bill, and we'll continue to work through it in the coming weeks.
Here's a scenario that some have floated behind the scenes. If this bill gets sidetracked, sidelined, retained, who knows what, defeated, but then gets tacked on to Medicaid expansion, would you vote for Medicaid expansion that has this Parental Bill of Rights amended onto it?
Look, I think we saw what happened with the budget 2 years ago when we had some things that didn't get a full vote on the floor of the House. Education freedom accounts being one example, abortion ban being an example, divisive concepts being another example that really didn't belong in that bill. It got tacked on and it really muddied the waters of what, a budget is actually intended to do. I would have some strong concerns about the bill being retained or tabled and then tacked on to, any other piece of legislation. I think it deserves an up or down vote on the floor of the House.
It's an issue that's been big in Manchester here is the situation with bail and people being released from custody after a crime that may be violent or very serious. House Democratic Caucus has effectively blocked legislation that would substantively change the bail law, teaming up with a lot more libertarian-leaning Republicans. Ideological support for the law is there, but the practical reality is that lives are being lost now in Manchester. You've got a bill to study the idea of magistrates taking over from the current system, having a bail magistrate that wouldn't be a bail commissioner, a magistrate. But isn't the problem more urgent than that? Doesn't there need to be action rather than just study?
Well, I think we're also seeing, a bail reform bill come over from the Senate, and I think that the magistrate solution is one that, I was a co-sponsor of the bill before it became a study. I think it's smart. I think it's a way that we can make sure that we've got the resources so that someone who's being detained pretrial is able to, have essentially that hearing up front. So they say, hey, let's see how serious this crime is and what the accusations are. I think it's going to be important that we protect people's civil liberties and also protect the situations that folks find themselves in. There's a third of folks who are held pretrial who, sometimes they don't actually need to be held. And so I think it's going to be important moving forward that we have a quick way that people can have that pretrial hearing to figure out how serious the accusations are against the person, whether they need to be held. I think magistrates is the way to go on that, and I'm looking forward to watching that play out in the process.
House Democratic Leader Matt Willman, thanks for joining us on Close Up.
Thanks, Adam.
We appreciate the time.